Welcome to First Down Sports. Now, this is we have a breakout show, and we're going to decide if it's going to be First Down Sports on the intro, Andy, or if it's going to be FDS CFL. We got to figure that out.
Sure.
Why don't you try it again?
FDS. Welcome to FDS CFL. I don't know. I like First Down Sports. We're going to play with it.
Okay.
Just so you guys know who I am, as always, I'm your host, Ray Dunn. Sitting with me at the table again is Andy Jardine.
Yo.
And on sound and audio, normally at the back of the room, but for the people that are going to watch on the YouTube channel, he's now at the table, Nick Dunn.
Hey, you guys. And lady.
Hold on. Oh, yeah, and lady. When we were down in Halifax, and we're going to be talking some CFL expansion to Halifax tonight, one of the key factors that came back, and it got a huge round of applause twice in the room, is that the fact that sports needs more influence from women.
Yeah.
Whether it's from a management, a league perspective, team perspective, media perspective, a number of different perspectives.
Yeah.
So we heard you here at First Down Sports, and we have made sure to address that issue. Mm-hmm. And it's my pleasure to welcome, as a regular member to FDS CFL, Jeannie B.
Well, it's about time that you've listened. Well done.
It's about time. On that note, I think we should introduce our sponsors because they're going to be very happy. And again, Moose Head, Moose Light. It's scary good. Get yourself a beer. It's pretty good stuff. If you need hats, shirts, jackets, you know the drill. Go see our buddies, the Doyles. And last but not least, if your kitchen sucks, make sure you get out and get yourself some Done Right sauce. Andy?
And quit your bitching. Fix your kitchen.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's our sponsors.
Yeah.
So just so you guys have an idea of what's going on here tonight on FDS CFL, this is going to take a little bit. Oh, before we even do that, I forgot the key thing.
What's that?
Guys, welcome to Season 2, Episode 1.
All right.
Of Canadian podcast.
Yeah.
On this podcast, just so you guys do know, we are going to be mainly talking Canadian football. So we are talking CFL, maybe a little U Sports across Canada that will mix in from time to time. But this show will primarily be focused around the CFL. Now, so we're going to be talking CFL expansion tonight. And then last but not least, we have a neat interview tonight, Andy. Mm-hmm. Mike from the Podskee Wee Wee podcast out of Hamilton.
Yeah.
He's going to come on and join us. We're going to talk a little Ticats. We're going to get, we're going to get a competitors' team's thoughts on the Halifax expansion.
Yeah.
And I think it's great that we're going to start collaborating with other CFL podcasts across the country.
We're going to sprinkle in a little Johnny Manziel to this, too.
Little Johnny Manziel.
How can you not, right?
Manziel had a big day. He was on the Tomahawk podcast today. It came out, right?
Yep. Early this morning.
I listened to it. I had a tough time following his voice and Joe Thomas's voice.
Really?
At the beginning of the interview.
Okay.
It took me a little bit to...
That would have made for a really weird interview if you didn't know the difference between them.
There you
Where's
go.
the Tomahawk podcast from?
So that is Joe Thomas from the Browns and a former player, Andrew Hawkins, and they got together to do a podcast. They talk really candidly, like behind the scenes stuff. Even when they interview players, they tell like actual true stories. They give their... I still don't know how Joe Thomas is pulling this off, the fact that he's not even retired yet and he's... given his opinions on the inside workings of his own team. But I guess when you're like, you've made the Pro Bowl every year of your entire career and you're going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, you can do that.
You can do that.
But yeah, they just got together and they started a show called Tomahawk, just putting their two names together.
Now, when you say Hawkins, is this the guy that was the wide receiver for the Bengals?
Wide receiver for the Bengals. He was on that show that time that Michael Irvin put on where they were competing for a spot for a contract with the Dallas Cowboys.
Okay.
Andrew Hawkins, previously of the CFL, and our buddy Ray Perkin will tell you a story about Andrew Hawkins because he roomed with him one time.
Wow.
But Hawkins was runner-up on that show and then got a chance, played with the Cincinnati Bengals, played really well enough to get a big contract from the Browns as a free agent.
Yeah.
And then, he he was released by the Browns like a mutual parting of ways, and he joined the Patriots for a while in training camp, and I think he decided he was done playing and never really made it to regular season with them. He decided to retire himself. So he's becoming a bit of a media star now.
So did he actually wear a Patriots jersey?
I imagine, yeah.
I wish nothing but the worst for his podcast.
Wow.
Nothing
Okay.
but the worst.
All right.
All right. So let's. What do we want to do? We want to get right into our trip to Halifax.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
Let's do it. So last Friday, there was a Randy Ambrosie made his CFL road trip to all the 9 CFL cities across Canada.
Yeah.
And he was in Toronto and said, you know what? I should get out and go see Halifax. And Anthony LeBlanc and Bruce Bowser, the two of the ownership team, said, yeah, that'd be great. Come on out. Had they thought about this, it might not have been the perfect time because they weren't ready to make the splash that we were hoping for. But that being said, let's talk about our trip.
Before we do, give yourself a round of applause, please, just for a second. That's appropriate. You want to know what it's for? It's the first time I've ever heard you say Randy Ambrosie's last name correctly.
Did I?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I'm
I was
giving myself a double shot.
Yeah, exactly.
Good job.
3 whole syllables you put into that. That was really
Randy
good.
Ambrosie.
Yep.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right, so Andy, why don't you start off leading us down the road about our trip there?
So Ray and I mean, we won't bore you with the details of the trip there. We landed in Halifax. I was ribbing Chris a little bit on Twitter because he didn't come with us, and not only were we on time, we were so early there was nobody even there when we went into the hall. I guess it was downtown at the Westin.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah.
The Westin.
So Ray and I found some free parking, as you do in Halifax, and we went in, and it was very kind of an informal thing. You just went up, presented yourself with your name and everything, so they made sure that you were on the list. They told us, I think there was about 400 advance tickets they had given out to this, which is a really nice showing. Yeah. But I actually heard them talking afterwards that there was more people there. I think they probably just let some people stroll in after a while.
People snuck in?
I think they were just like, no, we don't have tickets, but can we go in there? And they were like, yeah, go stand in the back or something. And it was pretty cool to see. Ray and I immediately ran into some University of New Brunswick coaches that Ray recognized from the field. There was lots of New Brunswick representation.
I had a great chat with Gary Waterman. He's the head coach for the Saint of X-Men. So it was great talking to him, seeing him off field. St. Mary's was represented. Holland College was represented. There was people there from Mount A. So all the schools sent people there. And then, like Andy said, we saw the
Moncton Mustangs were there.
The Moncton Mustangs were
What
there.
about officials? Did you see any other officials?
I was the only official there.
Really?
Yeah, I was very surprised by that. I was the only official there.
Yeah, there was one particular colleague of Ray's that we were hoping would be there, and he wasn't. So I didn't get to meet him, but another time. Until then, he shall remain unnamed. Never mind, you dropped his name.
Just dropped his name.
Yeah.
We thought Vince Williams from CTV would be there, but it was obviously a global event because Global TV had the place covered like crazy.
Nice. But all the teams were represented there with jerseys. When we first walked in, even though the place was empty, there were 2 people up front super excited playing catch in this place, and nobody objected to that whatsoever.
Nice.
And it was a great atmosphere. It filled up really fast. There were some, those homemade Atlantic Schooner jerseys in there. So there was some people representing that way. But all the teams were represented. And overall, and we'll get into what we took away from what they disclosed, but overall, the atmosphere was way beyond what I was expecting. The excitement is there. Even all those people wearing their Riders gear or Bombers gear or you name it. I never heard anybody that said that, actually, there were at least 2 people that said, you bring a team here and that's an excuse for me to remove this jersey. So these people, they want a team to root for. And it was really awesome.
It was really awesome.
Yeah.
The one thing I'm very surprised, Jeannie, he's left out of the story. Because there's one thing Andy loved about this road trip that I've never seen a guy get so excited for. and that was our stop in Masstown
I was
for the
just going to
donuts.
say, was it for the warm
He
donuts?
loved the donuts. I mean, we got a bag of
It's a great
6.
place to
We,
stop.
Yeah.
we got
Yeah.
a bag of 6. I got 1. There was 2 when I got home. I mean, Andy ate at least 3
Oh, I
donuts
heard
on
the
this
call
trip.
on the way back. I know how many
Yeah.
of them you ate.
Yeah, I tried one of them. I tried, and it was good though. I should have tried it like immediately after, but we went in there and we got these amazing like homemade breakfast sandwiches at this
Yeah,
it's like
they're
a
good.
market. So after I ate that, I couldn't possibly eat a donut immediately after, but somebody could. So apparently they were nice and warm at that point. So when I eventually did eat one on our trip back, and we had gone to Jack Astor's afterwards and everything, it wasn't warm anymore, but it was still quite enjoyable, Ray.
It was.
good.
It was very good.
It's an experience.
It was very good.
But anyways, Ray, so how about maybe the best way to go through it? You went in there. We were going to vlog it. So we actually videoed ourselves in the back. People were looking at us like, who are those clowns?
Oh, you did? I didn't know
talking.
that.
Well, because we decided not to post it. But so what we were going to do is we were going to do a little before and after. Ray, ever the optimist, as you guys know, and me, the realist or Mr. Negative, as you know. Yeah. So I set myself, I didn't want to be disappointed. So the whole time I was just saying, let's keep our expectations under control. Let's go in there expecting to hear something, but not everything. Because all these rumors that were coming out, like, yeah, he's going to announce this. There's a stadium. We're getting a Grey Cup in 2 years. They're building a new highway. Like all this stuff. I thought it was a little over the top. And there was a lot of effort by the official Twitter site of the ownership group, amongst other sites,
And the city was
trying
disputing it.
to pour a little cold water on this whole thing, right? So I was thinking, all right, there's no way that all of this is going to happen, but hopefully we get something. So, but Ray, Andy, we're hearing it all and everything. But now he likes to get himself psyched up for that, right? So anyway, so I'd say after the very first segment, Ray turns and looks at me, and goes, yeah, this isn't going to happen, is it?
All right. Let's start.
This isn't what I expected was going to happen.
So we got in there and we sat down, and you could feel the energy in the crowd. There was this tension in the crowd. People were getting up on stage with their signs. This one guy was getting up there with a hat. There was excitement in the crowd. If I could say, the place was going crazy. It was it was really awesome. But when Randy Ambrosie came out to the stage, everybody's on their feet cheering. Everybody's, it was really neat
Seems
moment.
to be well liked.
He is well liked. He did the whole. He took a selfie of himself, with the crowd, which I never did see on social media, but
I checked it out.
Did you?
You could kind of see us.
yeah,
Yeah.
because we were right in line with the
Tucked
camera.
away in the back. Yeah.
But
Were you on your tippy toes?
No, I was sitting down, so it was even worse. What I mean by you could kind of see us was you could kind of see Ray, and I just knew I was next to him.
there you go.
Ray will make an effort to go look for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so when he came out, it really was, you could feel, and the whole drive down, yes, I had the feeling an announcement was going to come. And when he came out on stage, the energy that came with it, you knew it was coming. Everybody in the room knew it was coming. And the host of the afternoon, Paul Hollingsworth with TSN, Paul, first question he asks him is, we all want to hear there's an announcement today. How far are we from hearing that Halifax is getting a team? It was like one of the first questions.
Oh yeah.
And Randy Ambrosie answered the question like a politician. He could have been running for the PC government. It was a very political answer. And as soon as I heard the answer, that's when I turned to Andy and I went, it's not coming.
Right.
We're not getting it.
Yeah. So though you held on to a little bit of optimism, because I was like, no, you're right, like it's not. And then you said, no, maybe he just doesn't want to steal the thunder from the ownership.
Yeah, because
group,
the owners were the second part of the afternoon.
we knew they were coming out in the second half. But he really set the stage with everything has to be in order and so on. But despite the fact that we didn't get an announcement, I still left there incredibly optimistic that we will very, very soon.
Yeah.
Because they came so close to saying this is going to happen. We've never felt so good about it. We think it's the perfect storm and all of that, right? Let me ask you, Nick and Jeannie, about this one, though, because we did get one announcement, okay? And I want to know how you feel about this because it was super important to me. So it was worth the trip when I heard this. When the ownership group said, yeah, so this team will not be branded the Halifax whatever. This will be the Atlantic whatever. This is a team that's not going to be downtown Halifax. The stadium is going to be on the outskirts of Halifax, and it's a regional team. And that was flat out stated as a fact. And that was very important to me. Not that I'm anti-Halifax. I just felt like we needed that to be our team. Yeah. And it wasn't quite going to feel like our team being called the Halifax Schooners or whatever they end up getting called. I was fine with Maritime or Atlantic. How do you feel about that? Were you indifferent to hear that? Or?
I like it.
Yeah.
I like it that it's that way. I mean, it's not like we have any other teams in the province, so why just make it a Halifax team?
Right.
Like,
I'll go so far as to say that I would have been less excited had they said it was going to be branded Halifax. I was still getting season tickets.
Yeah.
But I would have been less excited about that.
I don't want to walk around with a Halifax anything on my...
Okay.
Or Nova Scotia. I'm a New Brunswicker. I'm a Maritimer. So if it's either Maritime or I'm an Atlantic Canadian. So I'm an East Coaster. I'm all of those things. But anything is, for, Halifax itself or Nova Scotia, I'm glad they haven't done that.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah, it was... And
Schooner thing's cool, too, because Schooners are New Brunswick, too. So.
And,
true.
When you looked at the population in that crowd that day, it really was an Atlantic crowd because you had people from St. John, New Brunswick that got up and spoke. Fredericton, there was a Bathurst couple. Charlottetown was represented. Summerside was... The entire region was represented for this 2-hour road trip visit. So there's no question this team is going to be well represented, and it's going to be a regional crowd. It's not going to be just based on the city of Halifax.
There was a lot of applause throughout the entire event, but when the two speakers went up and introduced themselves as being from St. John, New Brunswick, and said, "We drove down today," just that caused applause throughout the entire place. And it wasn't just the fellow New Brunswickers saying, "Yay, us too." No, it was everybody. Like, everybody was super excited that people from outside of Halifax were traveling to this. So it was really cool. Like, everything was applauded that.
But if you think it was the other way around, if it had been in Moncton, when we had the opportunity, if you had called it the Moncton whatever,
right?
It's the same for those Halifax residents. They don't want to necessarily wear a Moncton jersey, right?
Oh yeah,
they want it to be something that everybody can be included in.
Yeah, but I think if this meeting took place at like the Delta in downtown Moncton, and some people from Halifax traveled up for it, and in that meeting, it was announced that this will not be called the Moncton whatever.
Oh, they'd be happy about it.
Then they would feel the same as us.
Agreed. Yeah.
Right.
And I do think that people from Halifax would have traveled up here for this meeting, just like we've traveled down there. So,
I got a question for you guys. So one of the topics that came up that Randy Ambrosie spoke about is the fact he's considering moving the season start date ahead to where it is now by approximately 4 to 5 weeks, meaning the Grey Cup will be at the end of October versus the end of November.
And what's the reason for that?
Weather.
They're finding it's getting to...
Yeah, like the game that we went to, although we found awesome. We thought it was awesome.
Yeah, it was truly Canadian.
A lot of fans don't want to have that. They want to go when it's warm and they don't have to wear their snowsuits.
Press the boo button, please.
Sorry, there you go.
They're also saying throughout the whole season they get all this nice weather and also the championship game.
That's a good point. Yeah. That's true. During it's summer, so it would start in.
So it'd start May.
Yeah.
May versus.
So I didn't boo that. I actually applauded that, and it's not. I have no problem with a snowy Grey Cup.
Yeah.
I do agree that it impacts the game in a way where the best team may not necessarily win, but fine, that's football. However, what it said to me was that lull that I have to go through without any football, without any NFL or CFL, just got shorter.
Right.
If the CFL starts in May, plus it'll help the popularity of CFL because even those people that that are primarily NFL fans that we try to we try to get them into the CFL. We say, no, it's a cool game. You know,
It's
you just
4
got
months.
you have an opportunity there where they're craving football and there's no NFL for them to watch. I think it's a great thing, but that's why I applaud it, because we were going to get football
So
earlier.
really because of weather.
Yeah, weather's a major factor. Now, I got a couple.
Don't forget though, your favorite league's coming up soon, the XFL.
Yeah, I think it's in like 2 years. Actually,
2020. All right, I got a couple questions for.
What's their schedule like though?
It's going to be in the spring and be over before the NFL starts.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's smart.
So I got a question for you guys.
Yep.
This is for Nick and Jeannie. When it comes to Grey Cup, would you guys prefer to have Grey Cup on a Saturday or the traditional Sunday?
I think most of the games are on Saturday in the CFL. They don't play games on Sunday.
Yeah, there's some games
they
on
do.
Sunday, but there's always
their
games on
playoff
Saturday.
games.
Mostly.
Their playoff games are always on Sundays.
But during
so.
the season, the regular season,
They're all over the place.
They,
they're all over
yeah,
the
it's
place, but I
Thursday,
don't-
Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
yeah, I don't, when we were watching throughout the season, we didn't, maybe it's because we were watching NFL on Sunday, but I just
That's
don't
why.
remember being in a torn situation to say,
Yeah.
I noticed it mostly Saturday, so Saturday feels like the right day to me for football,
Yeah,
for Canadian football.
I can tell you as a Browns fan in the
Oh,
midst
hold on,
of
let's just
Well, I
get
was going to verify a
Oh, okay,
fact
right,
here,
right,
though. I
okay.
got a fact for you.
Sorry, okay.
As a Browns fan in the middle of an 0-16 season, I can tell you that I was conflicted on Sundays, and there were CFL
were?
games.
Okay.
There were CFL games
Okay.
happening at the same time as a Browns game. Sorry,
Okay.
Nick. Go ahead.
No.
It was a later game though, wasn't it? The Grey Cup. It started around.
No, it started. The game started. The game starts at 7:30 Atlantic time on Sundays.
I still got to watch my Bills game,
Yeah.
so that was fun.
So doesn't matter to you Saturday, Sunday. Okay, so here's.
What are they saying?
Well, I'll tell you that in a second. Here's the other interesting thing. Would you like to see the Grey Cup played at the traditional time, 7 o'clock, or would you like to see it at 4 o'clock Eastern time? So say a 5 o'clock kickoff here in Atlantic.
Now, for ratings wise, I think if they're gonna move it earlier, it should be on a Saturday.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ratings wise, because you're competing against the NFL at
Yeah.
that time, right?
Yeah.
I
What do you
think I'd like it a little earlier as well. I don't know. I just find that again when we're watching AUS or watching high school football, it's always it's earlier in the afternoon. I mean, there are some 7 p.m. games, but
Yeah.
most of the games what we watch are in the afternoon.
Interesting. Here's why I tell you that, because we're going to talk about this with Mike. I'm going to ask him the same questions because in Halifax, when Randy Ambrosie asked these questions, Halifax was almost unanimous in the fact that it should be a Sunday Grey Cup.
Really?
And Hamilton thought it should be a Saturday Grey Cup.
Yeah.
And everyone across the board except for Atlantic Canadians wants the time to stay the same. We want it to be earlier because our games are always on later here on the East Coast.
Oh, yeah. Maybe that's really why I'm thinking too. Is that everything just seems so late for us? So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To me, I love the tradition of a Sunday game. A big championship is on a Sunday. But I mean, that being said, I've worked AUS championships for years on Saturday, so I'm okay either way.
I was indifferent. I just didn't raise my hand for either. I don't care which one it is.
Okay.
I would watch it regardless.
Yeah, we'd watch it regardless.
Yeah.
So that's really our road trip. Is there anything else you think we need to touch on?
No, just
There was one kid. Do we want to talk about the one kid? Here, there's a couple of funny moments.
Yeah.
So one guy got up in front of the crowd. They had open mics. You could get up and ask questions. And he said to Ambrosie, he says, I think it's great that we're trying to get a team for Halifax. But don't you think we should also at the same time start a maritime division where Moncton has a team, Fredericton has a team, St. John has a team, Charlottetown has a team, St. John's has a team? And Randy says, let's just try to deal with the one team at this point.
Yeah.
And see where it goes.
Population.
It was complete
The
whacked up.
TSN guy was funny. He's like, "Hey, are you ready to announce the Atlantic Division today?"
The Atlantic Division.
Yeah. So.
That was really funny. And then we had one naysayer get up in front of the crowd. Andy, I had to step out at that moment. Why don't you talk about the naysayer?
So a young kid, you could tell he was a university student, likely studies economics, got up there and introduced himself and said, unfortunately, I'm going to be one of the naysayers. And then, I don't know if you guys ever saw the movie Good Will Hunting, but that's in the bar scene where the guy is sitting there ringing off a bunch of quotes from books and the guy calls him out on it. I mean, he just sat there and started quoting economists and studies that he read about, the effects of the public funding on sports and this and that. And he was polite and let, the ownership group and Randy Ambrosie answer and just kept going back to it again, quoting another report that he read and so on and so forth. And it got to the point where everybody was very respectful. Like, nobody was booing him or anything, but like in between his the responses from the ownership group, the applauds got like longer and longer and longer, hoping like he would eventually just kind of go sit down. And anyway, like by the end of it, they finally, like, I know they wanted to say it the entire time, but they didn't. So eventually he just goes, so are you saying that there will be no, public funding towards this? And they had to just say like, well, we kind of did say that within like the first 2 minutes of being up here on stage, right? So that, and then eventually the kid left. But yeah, there were some highlights. The only thing to say, Ray, because, anybody listening to this that wasn't there wants to know like how optimistic we are. Very. There was even a 3-month timeline thrown out there. Like when LeBlanc was challenged to say like, when do you expect an answer? He could tell how bad people wanted to hear something. And he said, like, I expect 2-3 months to have something more concrete to discuss with people.
Can I just throw one thing in at that point?
Yeah.
As he was saying 2 to 3 months, Bruce Bowser, Bowser, that was sitting beside him. Did you not get the feeling he was jumping out of his seat to want to say something instantly at that point? Like, I really got the feeling Bruce wanted to come out and announce, where Anthony was more like, whoa, we need more time. What was your read on that?
It was the opposite. I thought he was a little bit more conservative, and it was LeBlanc. I got a different read from LeBlanc. I thought he felt like, you could tell they were excited to have Randy there. But at the end of the day, Randy's road trip was his own agenda, and he just thought, I better sprinkle Halifax in at the end. I'm sure this ownership group was a little bit disappointed they didn't have more to say for this trip, but at the same time, you can't turn them down.
Right.
Right?
They had to know this was going to...
Right.
This was going to be asked.
So it just seemed to me, Ray, and again, we read it differently, and whatever. I wasn't looking at two people at the same time. I just kind of saw it as like he just had to say, like, he knew how bad the crowd wanted to hear something, and he gave them that time frame, where the other guy was really hedging, a lot. Okay. But they were both very, very optimistic. Like, I really think this is going to happen, guys, and pretty excited.
What was the other kind of? How many people attended his other road show? Like, were there 500 people at his other? I
don't know the number, but I saw a picture of the we'll ask Mike that actually, but I saw a picture of the Hamilton crew, and I think I equated it to you as something like, it looked like they packed a theater for the night a movie opened. I'd say it looked a little bit bigger than what we had in Halifax, but not, it wasn't a stadium. Yeah. Okay. So I'm not sure.
So I think that's pretty remarkable for Atlantic Canadians to get together for something like that. Yeah. It's a big deal.
It is.
For the population that we have, that we could put it for, 500 people in a room for an announcement that was...
Yeah, on a Friday afternoon.
Tickets on a Friday afternoon.
Friday afternoon, like, people taking off work.
It just shows how much we want it.
Probably my favorite quote of the day, Jeannie, is this. I don't remember if it was Bruce or Anthony that said this, but he said, for those naysayers out there that don't think a CFL team's going to fly, there's a little store that built there's a brand that built a store here in Halifax. And if they can draw people all over Atlantic Canada to come for couches and beds, then I think we can get people to come to watch professional football. And I loved it. I thought it was great.
Every time you bring up this quote that you call it, it becomes longer. There's more words that were not in the statement whatsoever.
That's pretty much.
If you want to know what the actual quote was, he looked at the guy and said, well, we're kind of thinking if an IKEA can draw that many people, we got a shot with a football team.
There you go. All right.
And he didn't say there's a certain store that did. No, he said IKEA. He said it. So.
Andy, are we getting a CFL team?
We are.
Oh, right. There we go. That's what I was looking for. All right. So that is our CFL wrap-up trip. We're still going to talk a little bit of expansion with our guests coming on. Andy, this is going to be fun talking to another CFL podcast.
Yeah.
We expect to be a CFL podcast at some point.
We are a CFL podcast.
We are a CFL podcast, but we want to be partnered with the CFL.
Sure.
And that will be coming in the near future.
Yeah.
We're on it. And from there, let's go over and talk to Mike.
Let's chat with Mike from the Podskee Wee Wee.
Here we go.
Podcast.
Here's Mike with Podskee Wee Wee.
All right, here we go, guys. So we're with Mike from the Podskee Wee Wee podcast, or the Podskee Wee Wee show. I'll get him to tell me a bit about that. How's it going, Mike?
Good, guys. I appreciate you guys having me on.
Awesome. Thanks a lot for taking the time for this. Now, we want to talk about a lot of stuff. We just finished a great discussion about the Halifax expansion. We want your take on that and a bunch of other things. But before we jump into that, listen, if we can get you any new listeners at all, we want to try. So why don't you tell us about yourself, tell us about your show, just give us kind of the rundown of what's going on over in your operation.
Well, me and my buddy, Josh Smith, he's a writer for 3downnation.com. We do a podcast that's called Podskee. It's all about the Ticats, and we dabble in CFL as well. You can find it at 3downnation.com, on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, and Podskee. So if you're interested in Ticat news, happy to gain a new listener.
Okay.
That's excellent. And it's funny, I've come across the Third Down Nation numerous times, whether it's Facebook, I see articles shared and stuff like that. So I was wondering where that originated from. So it's coming from your neck of the woods.
It was originally called, it was run by Drew Edwards. He's a beat writer for the Tiger Cats. He writes for the Hamilton Spectator. Originally it was called the Scratching Post blog. Just did it on the Ticat daily blog type of thing, and then eventually he wanted to grow that, so he started Down Nation. He got pretty much writers from all across the country, from each CFL city join, and it's been around for I think about two and a half years now. So yeah, that's where it started out.
Awesome. Well, listen, Mike, the big news around here that we're super excited about is obviously the potential expansion to the Maritimes with a 10th franchise. I just kind of want your take. You know, you're a Ticats fan in the Eastern Division, and this would be a 10th franchise to not only complete the CFL, but in my opinion, to complete this Eastern Division as well. And I just kind of wanted your perspective on the news and just in terms of like how you feel about it in general.
Well, this has been a dream of mine for years and years and years, because I have family in PEI, and I go to the East Coast every summer, and I always wanted to have a team Maritimes. That's great, but you know, I was a doubter for a long time. You know, you hear stories every couple of years, and nothing comes from it. So I was a pretty big negative Nancy, if you will, on the idea of it actually happening. But now that there's actual people involved, owners involved, that have the money and are pushing things forward, I am pretty optimistic about the whole thing. So if we can get a 10th franchise in the CFL, it would be amazing, and I would love it to be in the Maritimes. Great.
Awesome.
Yeah. A topic lately that I've heard, you know, a few podcasts talk about, you're probably familiar with the Two and Out guys. I started listening to them when I was trying to beef up my CFL knowledge a little bit. But when I hear the topic of divisions, you know, I hear people ask, are divisions really that important with the crossover and all that in CFL? And should they be eliminated altogether? And, you know, my opinion in divisions is they should be extremely important. I think they should be more important in the CFL than they even are. And I feel like this 10th franchise is the recipe for that. I feel like, you know, if we do get the 10th team and we even out the number of teams in the divisions, then you can play your division even more games. It reduces the travel of the west to the east and back and forth, and just kind of strengthens the rivalry of the teams within your division. What are your thoughts on that? What do you think about the divisions?
Well, there's been a lot of talk of changing it to just one division, because I don't know why but year after year after year, the Western Division is always better than. Now the Grey Cup game is a bit of a different story because it seems that the East Division team wins quite a bit, but during the regular season, it's basically no contest. The West Division always crushes the division. But if you had 2 5-team divisions, it would be perfect because I think there might be more strength, more teams in it. So I'm kind of on the fence about the one division right now because it's 9 teams. But if there was a 10, totally keep the division.
Yeah. Would you be in favor of completely eliminating the crossover thing in the playoffs if the divisions were even?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, I mean, because if there's even teams in each division, I don't see necessarily a need for it.
Okay.
I got some questions for you.
All right.
So, how do you feel? So, first of all, Jerry Glanville's joining the Ticats defense, which I thought this was quite surprising because between you and me, Mike, and the rest of the people at the table here, I didn't even know Jerry Glanville was still living at this point. But I do think this makes the Ticats coaching staff the oldest coaching staff in the history of football. What are your thoughts on that?
It could be close. You know, Glanville is a June Jones guy. I believe they coached together maybe in Hawaii or SMU. But they're tied some way in the past.
Yeah.
And, you know, he's bringing in his guys. That's what coaches do. I guess they bring in their guys. And the Glanville thing's a little bit questionable because he's a bit of a character. You know, yeah. Apparently in the past, he believes that Elvis Presley was still alive and he 2 tickets at the box office every game.
Yeah.
Just in case he showed up. So it's a bit wacky, but so is June Jones. I mean, June Jones golfs barefoot. He's a bit of a different guy. So
yeah.
I'm not too worried about it. Yes, I think he's 76 now. But they also brought back Orlando Steinhauer, who was their defensive coordinator for 3 or 4 years and did a great job. He went to the NCAA last year, and now he's coming back. So with him coming back, I'm not so worried about Glanville being the DC because I think Steinhauer will be there. I'll show him along, in the CFL game and all that stuff.
Yeah, and you can see that he's the assistant head coach, so he's obviously being prepped to eventually take over the reins for the Ticats at some point, I would think. But hopefully he has some good, hopefully he has a good voice in the locker room as far as that defensive schemes go.
Oh yeah, he will. He did very well when he was hired. So, I think he is the head coach in waiting because June Jones. I think this is a short-term thing, and Steinhauer deserves to be a head coach in the CFL, and I think shortly he will.
Awesome. Well, one of the topics that Andy really wants to talk about with you here is around Johnny Manziel, and one of the comments that June Jones dropped is the fact that Johnny Manziel will be the greatest football player in the history of this Canadian Football League. So, Andy, I don't know if you want to talk about introduce the subject, but do you want to talk some Manziel?
I was planning to down near the end.
Oh, near the end? Okay.
That's all right. Let's
see, this is why you normally share the interview, right?
Yeah, that happened actually. Anyway, Mike, so the Ticats, we'll get to Manziel in a second here, I'll tell you what. But, we were kind of following along the Ticats last year, and it was kind of a sad state for a little while, and then when...
Jeez, it was brutal, man.
Well, I can tell you, when we get to the Johnny Manziel reason and why I want to talk about him so much, you're going to understand that I know exactly what pain feels like. But it just seemed like when June Jones showed up, the whole culture, everything about that team completely changed. And I started watching them closer than any other team. I never missed their games. They were just so fun to watch. Mazzoli and CJ Gable, I was heartbroken when he was traded away. He was my favorite running back to watch. What was your thoughts kind of when you heard June Jones was coming in? Were you optimistic about the whole thing? And obviously, how do you feel about it now?
Well, when he first came in, I was, anybody taking over would have been good. We were 0-8. They couldn't do anything offensively, defensively. It was just it was a terrible football team. I didn't know too much about June Jones. I knew that he coached in Hawaii, and I knew that Hawaii had a very high octane offense. Run and shoot offense. So I was optimistic about it. I didn't think that there would be such a big turnaround. I mean, you're 0-8, and then came in. I believe they finished 6-4. So that's a pretty big turnaround. He came in and he made changes right away. He put Brandon Banks, put him out of the return game, put him in as a starting receiver, and he got over 1,000 yards. 9. So the total culture change. It just seemed like a whole different, really opposite about this coming up.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, we're going to ease in here to the Manziel thing. So I kind of became, and I'm waiting for my team out here, Mike. So I'm following all the CFL teams, and I kind of, have my favorites to watch, and a lot of it depends on the excitement of the players and so on. But I became a bit of a closeted Ticats fan last year and just loved watching them, especially near the end of the season. Pretty excited about them this year. But I'm a completely non-closeted Cleveland Browns fanatic, for my entire life. And I know pain. And I know what Johnny Manziel can potentially do to a franchise. But that being said, still, the idea of Johnny Manziel coming to the CFL and what that could potentially mean for the CFL, whether he succeeds or falls flat on his face, is very exciting to me. As a Ticats fan and somebody but also somebody who covers the team and speaks probably very objectively about them as well, what are your thoughts and have been your thoughts the entire time on this whole Johnny Manziel circus?
Well, I knew that Manziel was on the Ticats Association as years ago. And when I first heard that it might happen, I was really excited. This guy, he reminds me of Doug Booty. The way that he plays on the fly. He's not that tall. He has a good arm. He's just exciting player to watch. But at this point, I'm just sick of the story. I think Jeremiah Mazzoli is the guy. Even if Manziel came in, I don't necessarily think that he would out the starter spot. So, yes, if Manziel came to CFL, there would be a lot of eyeballs that come on to CFL that normally wouldn't watch it. Jersey Dale TV ratings, all that good stuff. But for me personally, as a Ticats fan, I could care less because I think that they would make money selling jerseys, but I don't think they would make a lot of money selling tickets because they already sell out much of the games. It's not a really good opportunity for them to sell tickets. Johnny Manziel. I think that he would draw a lot of fans on the road. Like,
yeah,
with DC, I think came here to Edmonton. I think he tended to go up, but in Hamilton, I don't think he'd make it.
I wonder how many Americans would cross the border to come across to, right now we have Canadians crossing to go to the Buffalo Bills game at the, Niagara South. But I'm wondering how many Americans would make the trip to come across to see Johnny play for Hamilton.
Yeah, and Johnny's fan base is very much in the South, right? Like, he's still royalty in Texas and things like that. I think where the positive impact in the CFL would come is the deals with ESPN and the ratings on ESPN, for down south, where people are like, hey, the CFL thing, it's on TV, and did you hear Johnny Manziel is starting for this team that's named after two different cats? Like, we need to check this out. So that's where I think the excitement would come in. Again, it would either stick or it wouldn't, but I think that sort of initial burst of excitement would be really good for the league. But And I know you were working today, Mike, so I don't know if you're up to date on all the news. Manziel appeared on the Tomahawk podcast this morning, which is a joint venture between Joe Thomas of the Browns and Andrew Hawkins, and kind of opened up on a lot of different things. And
Hawkins used to play in the CFL, I think.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, he played in the CFL and he played for the Browns as well. Yeah, so they interviewed him and he kind of came clean on a lot of stuff. But then a bunch of news dropped after that, and Johnny is now making it very clear to, the NFL that he is willing to accept a contract with zero guaranteed dollars in it, and is more than willing to join a practice squad for a while to prove himself. So I think what I get from that is, yes, he was asking for way too much money, right? When he said he wanted to be paid like Caleros or whatever, which I think is like $500,000, and everybody said that's crazy. It is, but I think Johnny never let go of the fact that the NFL is his primary dream, and there were avenues to get in there. He's going to be playing in the spring league, where he's going to be auditioning for NFL teams, as well as the CFL and the Ticats, where they can decide whether they really want to drop that money on him. But if you look at the finances of it, a practice squad player makes about $8,000 a week in American in the NFL, and the minimum contract in the NFL is about $470,000 a year American, which is about $600,000. So that, even the biggest quarterback contract he could possibly sign in the CFL, he can kind of make that money in the U.S. pursuing his dream, and that's why I'm pretty pessimistic now with this recent news that this is happening.
Yeah, I've been pretty pessimistic for a while now about him in the CFL, unless the Ticats get right and someone wants to get him.
Yeah.
Sure. Now, I always thought that Montreal would be probably a team that would pay him. They were really hot for a while in Montreal, the Alouettes. So they're selling out and all that stuff. Now they're on a bit of a downward spiral. I think that would really help out their team bringing the people back. But he's going to the spring league. I don't know what damn being honest. I don't know that they don't get paid, but there's a coach there watching. So I wish him the best. I hope he gets back. That's all. I'm not sure it's going to happen unless he plays in the CFL. If you want to make it back, you got to play the best. And the best league, second best league in the world. That's the second best league. So I think he needs to play the CFL for get. But I could be wrong.
Mm-hmm. All right, Mike. Well, listen, we'll wrap it up there. You kind of you warned us about the potential cell phone issue, and I think your cell phone and my cell phone combined right here have made for some rocky audio, but we caught most of it, and we'll definitely play around with it a little bit. Nothing was ruined by any stretch, but we really, really appreciate you calling in.
Yeah, and we as the season gets closer, Mike, and we get into the season, we'd love to have you guys on the podcast again, and maybe we'll join you guys at some point.
Yeah, for sure. I anytime, guys. I'm glad to be back.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, man, and go Ticats until my schooners arrive, at least.
Yeah, and then I'll be if the schooners arrive, they'll be my second favorite team.
Awesome.
I mean, that would mean the world to get you guys here. So awesome. Imagine a great cup in Halifax.
Yeah, be awesome.
All right, see you guys. Thanks
All
a
right,
lot.
take care, Mike.
Thanks a lot, man.
Yeah.
Later. All right, great interview, guys. He kind of warned me the other day that his cell phone sometimes isn't great, and I'm like, well, how bad could it really be? Everybody's cell phone kind of acts up, but again, mine and his, I think, combined forces for some rocky audio there. But I don't think we really lost any of his.
We got to hear his thoughts. I mean, the guys from Hamilton, Ontario, their technology is supposed to be pretty good in Ontario. For a second, I thought we were talking to an Eskies fan.
Well, he mentioned Edmonton there for a second, so I don't know if he's out in Edmonton working or something, but
okay,
yeah.
All right.
Well, anyway, that's the interview. That's the show. That's our Halifax discussion, Ray.
Well, I loved it. I look forward to having the Podskee Wee Wee podcast on as we get closer to the season and into the season.
Yep.
We're going to learn a lot through these podcast connections as far as helping us learn more about the game as you know, our team comes to fruition, hopefully by 2020.
Hopefully soon.
Yeah. All right, guys. So that is your season 2, episode 1 podcast for first FDS CFL edition.
FDS CFL, yeah.
Now,
like it.
before we get out of here, do we have any final thoughts at the table here tonight?
I was just thinking 2020. That's a special year for you.
Yeah. Why is that?
It's a
I'll
big
be-
birthday year for
boy.
you.
Big 5-0.
Half a century.
5-0. Yeah.
Oh, all right.
It just clued in for a second. Just
Yeah,
to
in
make a
2020,
comment that
I'll-
Ray will be
in-
50
In
years
2020, I'll be heading over to hole number 16 to tee off.
old. There you go.
3 holes left to go.
You'll be playing up with me.
3 holes left to go, and I'm probably 8 under par. Anybody else? Any final thoughts at the table?
No, thanks again, Mike, for coming on the show. And guys, I thought it was fun. It's nice getting back into this, and I can't wait for the CFL season to finally get going.
Yeah, I can't wait for it too. We're changing things up here a little bit, and rather than talk about our sponsors, I want to talk to you about my Moose moment of the night. I have this new thing. It's called the Moose moment. And the fact that Andy Jardine has admitted Halifax is getting a CFL team, folks, that's your Moose moment of the night.
Moose moment, yeah. Do you have a sounder for a moose moment? Can we get a moose call?
I'm gonna get a moose call for my moose moment.
For your moose moment.
Yeah,
Awesome.
there you go.
That's a good idea.
All
Even
right.
though I don't get what you're talking about, but that's fine. But I never understand anything.
That's fine.
That's all right. Don't worry about it. We'll have a couple of moose moments of our own. All right, folks, that's episode 1 wrapped up. We will talk to you again in the near future. Next week, we're going to have our regular podcast, but we will have an episode 2 of season 2 of the Canadian podcast very shortly. Stay tuned. Enjoy the week.
Later, guys.